Yeah. I think we've talked a little bit about some of this in the past, but part of it is expecting the coach to do too much too fast. You know, I said that coaching's not a silver bullet. It's not going to change the school overnight. So setting realistic expectations, but also setting a realistic assessment to make sure that coaching is working towards meeting your goals. So, you know, the coach and the principal need to sit down and make that kind of assessment strategy that's going to help them determine whether coaching is really meeting their goals. So what else? Well, one of the mistakes that we see frequently is that there isn't that kind of communication between the principal and the coach that you need. So regular, routine communication about coaching, what coaching's doing to help reach the building's goals. What other kinds of mistakes? Resources are the biggest one. You know, unless the principal of the school administrator understands how coaching is making a difference, they're probably not going to provide the kind of resources, specifically time, that coaches and the collaborating teachers need. So we need to be really clear that if the coach doesn't have very much time, that their workload is realistic and practical, that they're working a little bit from time to time with one or two teachers, that they're not trying to boil the ocean and change the culture of the entire school, you know, quickly. So I think those are the pieces where we see the most frequent mistakes in the building of a peer coaching program. First and foremost among those is the failure to get buy-in from school leadership.
How do we get buy-in from school leadership? Give us the quick fix.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but we frequently will, when we're working with, say, a new community, we'll ask to come in and have a work session with the school administrators, and if they already know the coaches, bring the coaches along as well. But we want to introduce what coaching is all about and how it can make a difference for schools. Even if we get all of those school administrators to that first meeting, we want the school administrators to come to the first part of the first day of peer coach training, because there's a talk about what makes effective, or a workshop activity about what makes effective professional learning. There's an activity that talks about the kinds of roles and responsibilities coaches play. There's another activity that has the coach begin to work with the principal on creating a coaching plan. We like the principals to come back for the beginning of the third session, where we're beginning to help the coaches shape their understanding of what a solid norm for effective professional learning, a norm for effective learning, student learning would be. And then we would like them to come back again for the seventh session, or at least the first half of it, where we talk about how coaching fits into a bigger model of effective school-based professional learning. So we would say you want the principals to be involved early and often in the training. But again, the other part of it that's absolutely critical is the coach has to go back after each part of the training and once training's concluded and make sure they're regularly communicating what they do. We've seen time after time where coaching is sort of taken off and it's worked with one or two teachers and never grown beyond that. And when you ask the coaches, what do you do in terms of sharing your coaching plan with your principal? Sorry, I haven't done much with that. What have you done to meet regularly and routinely to talk about how coaching is meeting school goals? Well, I've been coaching for a year and I haven't met with the principal yet. So you really need to make sure that the principal understands what coaching is all about during the training of a coach. But then you need to make sure the principal understands what coaching is all about because of this regular routine communication between the principal and the coach that goes on once coaching is in place. And a lot of coaches even will if it's okay with their learning partner, the teacher they're collaborating with, will invite the principal to come in, sit in on some of these planning sessions so they can see how learning activities are being transformed through the power of coaching.
Daniel, as a facilitator, you've been traveling around, and I've asked you this question before, but what would you like to learn more about now so that we can continue to be good facilitators here in Sweden?
Yeah, I'm thinking about, as a peer coach, you actually, can you hear me, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What you do as a peer coach, you give and you give and you give, and that's the function of the peer coach, to manage and to lead people on to the next level. Les, have you seen any success stories when it comes to further development of the peer coaches over time?
Yeah, that's a critical piece, and actually that's what we'll frequently do as we go out, is we'll try and find somebody who's in a municipality or some body, several people in municipalities, and we'll train them to train coaches. And part of the reason that we're doing that is we're an outside group. We can start a program, but there's no way for an outside group to support and sustain a program over time. So what's going to work to support and sustain coaching? That's somebody in a leadership position in the municipality or the community where we're working. Somebody who's a leader there already. And part of what makes their coaching successful there is that they spend time working one-on-one with coaching to understand what's working and why, where the challenges are coming up, and what the coach and that facilitator might do to help overcome those challenges. But the other thing that these facilitators are doing is they're helping to fill a need that the coaches have. They've come to understand that collaboration is a really powerful tool for learning, and they keep asking themselves, particularly if they're like Helena and they're the only coach in the school, who do I collaborate with? Who do I work with? And so they can begin to put groups of coaches together. We'll frequently see districts here, for example, 4 times a year bring coaches in for half a day. All of the coaches from across the district will come in for half a day, and they'll have a workshop. And a fair bit of it focuses on what's working and why. You guys share. Where are our challenges and what can we do to overcome those challenges? But some of it's always around what can we do to further develop coaching skills. Communication skills, for example. You know, in coaching, we teach some basic collaboration skills, but you know, Helena was saying earlier, you know, she said in part you have to be a psychologist. Well, part of what we do when we come back and work with coaches on an ongoing basis is talk about how far can you push teachers before you're pushing them into a danger zone, and they're so frightened that they're going to shut down and you're not going to get any more collaboration. So we'll work through activities like that that are designed to help coaches be more effective at communicating and collaborating with their peers, and encourage, you know, these coaches to continue to grow professionally so they're more effective as coaches. So these facilitators can play a role then in the ongoing development and professional learning of coaches, something that every coach that I've worked with has said is absolutely essential to their success.
Great, thank you.
Les, there's a question for you from Sune. Can you see it in the chat?
I can. In the international arena, what's your picture of the Swedish school and teaching in general in our country, and the status of peer coaching in our country versus others? You know, I work with schools all across the world, and they're in vastly different places. So in the last year, I've worked with a couple of countries that were in the former Soviet Union, and they're just beginning to move from a very traditional didactic instruction to project-based learning, to the kind of learning where kids are actively engaged in their own learning and the learning has meaning in the real world. I've been also lucky enough to work with schools in, Sweden or Australia and the UK that are much further along in terms of project-based learning, in terms of actively involving kids in the kind of learning that I think is going to help them develop 21st century skills like communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity. So I think, the picture of Swedish schools in general is you're years ahead of most of what's happening, say, in classrooms here in the United States, where many teachers are beginning to make that transition from didactic instruction to active, engaging learning. Status of peer coaching is a little bit harder for me to give you an answer to, because I haven't been in close enough contact with enough coaches in Sweden to be able to answer that. I know, that I've worked with Jörger Porat, for example, and he's doing great things with coaching. But I don't have enough data points. I don't have enough information to draw judgments. The reality of it is that I don't see any states in the United States or Australia where we're seeing systemic use of effective coaching yet. So when I talk to you about these great examples of coaching, like, principals being really active and engaged in promoting coaching, we're still really talking about schools here and schools there, and we're talking about individual schools. So I think that the one thing that I've heard from Swedes often is that there is perhaps more time in the teacher's schedule for collaboration than there is in some other countries. But I've also heard that collaboration is a learned skill, and that many Swedish educators still need to learn that skill of collaboration and utilize that time that they have available to them more effectively, because as Helena said earlier in the conversation, many Swedish educators are still working largely in isolation. So let's take advantage of that time and use it more effectively.